right, I want to draw attention to this article because last week the San Francisco Chronicle published a story about Senator Diane Feinstein from California. A whistleblower and 4 unnamed Democratic representatives all spoke off the record, or on the record rather, but anonymously. They said that the senator suffers from significant memory loss and cognitive decline, and that this is a disservice to her legacy, and the people of California, although the rest of us could argue that it is a disservice to the people of the United States because she is such an influential senator, and she has written bills that pass at the federal level, not just for California. So we want to address this topic in a sensitive way because I think it is serious. Currently, there is no limit to how long an elected official can serve as long as they are not the president. That does have 2-term limits. There are no term limits for senators or congresspeople. West Virginia's Robert Byrd was allowed to serve 9 terms and was still serving when he died at the age of 92. Orrin Hatch, who died over the weekend, served for 42 years before retiring in 2017. Now, Diane Feinstein is the oldest sitting senator. She is 88 years old. Chuck Grassley, also 88 years old. Richard Shelby, James Inhofe, and Patrick Leahy are all in their 80s. President Biden will be 80 later this year. Now, think about it this way. These are people making decisions for Americans, but the average American is 38 years old. That was the median age in 2019. So if the average age of a senator is 64, that is true right now, and that is the highest average age of the Senate in history. Federal law allows for full retirement at age 70 for all of us, right? And they can apply for Medicare at 65. So to put this into perspective, the average American is in their late 30s, and yet the average senator is older than that American's parents. So do those of us in that generation still want our parents or our grandparents making decisions for us? Now, I am 43 years old, and I do not like to go to bed after 10:30 at night. So I often wonder, how do these lawmakers campaign and attend events that are well past my bedtime? So one line of logic would be, if they can hack the campaign trail, they must still be up for leadership, right? But beyond that, we have no test. We require competency tests for almost all licenses in the U.S. You must prove that you are continuously fit to drive a car. You must show continued education to practice medicine, law, real estate, home appraisals, right? But our elected leaders do not have to continue to pass any such eligibility tests. Former President Trump is 75 years old. He's back on the campaign trail, and he gets mixed up, sure, but he always got mixed up. There are a few clips of him over the weekend that I'd like to play. Do you have them?
No more drop boxes. The drop boxes are just so bad. No more drop boxes.
There was another when he couldn't remember the name of his own social network.
Had to give the American people their voice back by building something called Truth Sensual.
It's not sensual there. That's a misspeak. And then another when he talks about Zuckerberg.
The elimination of Zuckerberg drop box. I call them the unlock boxes. You know, they call them lock boxes. I call them unlock boxes.
Okay, but to be fair, he's always got confused. That's what to expect from him, right? President Biden last week answered a question about masks when the question was about Title 42 immigration. He also had to be shielded from tough questions by a staffer dressed as the Easter Bunny.
Pakistan should not, and Afghanistan should be.
Oh, the Easter Bunny, Mr. President.
And at one point, he appeared to shake hands with nobody after a speech, and he got pretty confused.
Above all.
Now, I myself have deflected these attacks on both presidents because I didn't want to be ageist, but I do think the time has come to have these conversations because here's some questions. What will happen when the current generation of lawmakers inevitably pass away and we have trained no new leaders? So there's one question. On the other hand, I believe that assuming decline due to aging is a limiting belief and a dangerous one. A body declines according to a number of factors, right? But research shows that the human body does not have to. All bodies can thrive based on certain circumstances of health and nutrition and genetics. I do not think you can assume that bodies and minds decline with age any more than you can assume that someone should be grandfathered, to use that appropriate term here, into their congressional seats, right? Qualification and aptitude continue to matter. But on the flip side, there does seem to be naivete at play when you look at, say, some of the younger elected officials. Would the youngest officials fare any better at a qualification and aptitude exam as the oldest, right? So here are a few problems as I see it. How do you establish qualification and aptitude? The United States obviously is not going to agree on any impartial test, given how much we are fighting right now on school curriculum and reading lists. So that solution's out. Another problem is supposed to be up to the voters to decide if their leader still has aptitude. If they want to reelect someone that's senile, shouldn't that be up to them? In theory, yes, but if voters' access to candidates is limited, as does seem to be the case with Senator Diane Feinstein, how will voters know that she may be in decline? In fact, these whistleblowers say she's never without her staff. She does not speak off the cuff anymore. She once was known as this sort of sharp as a tack whip, right? Another problem is that age limits would not be appropriate. As we've discussed, one person at 80 may be sharper than another at 40, despite what Dr. Fauci would have you believe, individual health matters. Another problem, term limits, such as the one we have for the president, would preclude the benefit of experience, right? Decidedly, 9 terms are too many, but maybe 2 is too short. Can a leader really benefit from experience only after 2 terms? Maybe a more appropriate limit would be 3 or 4 terms. This is a discussion we could have. And look, Western culture is youth obsessed. Setting senators out to pasture because they're of a certain age will obviously not help that problem. But some countries do find a way to revere and learn from their elders without relying on them to continue to run the show. So simply put, our current electoral system is not factoring for age, ability, or aptitude required for the job of leadership, and it is a disservice to us all. So I had this thought that in universities, there is the emeritus option. That means that one is retired but can still retain the rank of their last held office. So for instance, a professor emeritus is retired but can still retain office space, vote in department matters, even teach classes. So is there a way to offer senators who pass 3 or 4 terms an emeritus position so we retain the use of their knowledge and experience, sort of precluding their ability to continue to benefit, right, financially, whilst training the next generation of leaders and allowing those leaders to gain experience too? So I welcome your comments on the matter, but please keep them well-spirited. I think mean-spirited comments about aging and our current president or past president are not productive and not solutions-oriented. But I think that this is a time, especially when we have the oldest Congress on history, to have this conversation.
I like the emeritus idea. I don't know it would fly, though, and because the problem in the United States is that we put old people in nursing homes and we kind of cast them out. That's not part of our culture in the United States, sadly.
Yes.
And in other countries, like in other areas of the world, like Okinawa, for instance, there's quite a bit of research that shows the benefit to having elders be sort of the pillar of the community.
But they don't have to run the community.
Right. They're sort of looked up to. We can go to grandpa and great grandpa and seek his advice on fishing, right? Because he knew how to tie the best knots. But he's not running the show, the day-to-day operations anymore. So I don't know that the emeritus thing would fly. It'd be nice that it would be great that we might seek the counsel of our elders in the United States, but I don't think that would fly. Maybe sort of like the UK government does it, where you have the House of Lords, House of Commons. One is really more of a ceremonial. Elton John, you want to give Elton John a call. You want to give Paul McCartney a call to get his perspective on with his knighthood, on what the government should do. Maybe that's what we should do. We should just.
One problem with the emeritus option is also that they could stay and continue to be influenced by lobbyists, even more so.
Or become lobbyists themselves, which would be, like with term limits, that would be how I'd say you'd have to have some kind of clause in there.
But that is what happens.
I know,
fact.
exactly. And so that would be that every senator that was like term limited out, if they had the option, like you can hang out and be a mentor or you can go be a lobbyist, I'd be surprised if any remained as a mentor. I would be surprised. Not saying it wouldn't happen, but I would be surprised every time.
Beyond 280 in our Super Chat says, here's an idea. Go back to the concept of our elected officials serving for a bit and then going back to the private sector. That's what they do in certain legislatures. I don't know.
But I think a bit is what merits discussion, right, at this term. Because any other sort of we'll give him a test, right? We loved to say that during Trump's term, he should have passed a test, right? Well, okay, who's going to agree to that test? Because no one's going to. We're going to argue about that.
Yeah, who's going to take an IQ test? Who's going to take a cognitive test to see if you can remember things? These guys won't pass the test, and Diane Feinstein won't pass the test, and Strom Thurmond in his he wouldn't pass the test. None of these guys would pass the test. They're propped up by their lobbying interests. They're propped up by staffers who literally just shuttle them around and do their bidding. Someone in the chat brought up the great point of why do they need to retire when they should just not get reelected? And wouldn't that be great, right? If we don't feel like that this person is fit for office, we don't vote for them. But our system is so entrenched with money and lobbying money that someone who's 87 years old, who's been there for 30 years, who you might never even see Diane Feinstein out on the campaign trail campaigning at all.
Well, that is the case now, is that voters don't have access to her any longer. And they just sort of well, that's okay. I think
they see her name on the ballot and they know that the money behind it, because they're going to see ads all over the place. They're going to see all of the money that pours into making sure that this entrenched politician who supports these lobbying efforts and all of this corporate money is just going to be perpetuated.
Sure.
That's why senators don't lose.
Well, I think that it's at this point, right, when Joe Biden told us he would only seek one term for office, he said this on the campaign trail, now seems to be looking to his next campaign in 2024. When he promised us he wouldn't, partly, I think it was insinuated that it was due to age, right? His approval rating is lower than ever. He does show signs of confusion and cognitive decline that are beyond the sort of normal Joe Biden gaffes, which, look, he is a public figure who we are used to putting his foot in his mouth since he was young and virile, since he was still raising young children. So we're okay with him saying silly things, right? But it gets to a point where it's dangerous for all of us if the world thinks that we don't have a competent leader.
Well, we have a president right now who literally can't string two sentences together. And I know we had one before that who couldn't do that either, but we were sort of giving him a pass. But I mean, here's a guy he's in a room, he's meeting with people, and he's walking around in circles. He's having to be led. I mean, the horrible video a few weeks ago where President Obama shows up at the White House and they did their whole little hoop-de-doo. And President Obama is shaking hands with everyone. There was this energy at the White House. And all of these people worked for Joe Biden in that room. And yet no one was even acknowledging him. He was just kind of wandering around like this sad old man. And he was trying to get the attention of President Obama. He's putting his hand on his shoulder and he's ignoring him. It was really hard to watch. And then, of course, you had this video.
This is the archetype of death of a salesman, right? Where someone stays too long in something and they don't know that the world has, to me, one of the saddest characters in fictional literature is Willy Loman. And when you have Willy Loman in office, right, that's a disservice to all of us, right? That says we have not found a place for this person yet.
Well, you have him wandering around the other day, shaking hands with nobody and, up at the podium making comments that he used to drive a truck for a living, which is not true. He talks about, all of these things he just keeps saying that are not true. And it's okay for your uncle who is not running the free world. It's not okay for the president of the United States who is running the free world and who has his the ability to call on nuclear weapons, to pass trade agreements, to decide what to do with Russia, decide what to do in Ukraine. So there's real questions. It's 2022. He would arguably, I guess he would be the oldest president. Well, no, I guess Trump would be if he ran.
No,
So
Trump is 75.
So okay, so he would be the oldest. He was the oldest president.
He was.
So he would continue to be the oldest president. And I don't know how the Democratic Party moves forward on this. I mean, you know, you had Elizabeth Warren coming out today saying she's spoken to President Biden. He says he's running in 2024 and she supports him, and she is going to support President Biden in 2024. I mean, are we out of ideas? Like, this is the entrenched corporate oligarchy that runs the show, and they're happy with what he's been able to do to prop up Wall Street, to prop up the military-industrial complex, to carry out their bidding in Ukraine.
Well, part of this also is because elderly people are more likely to vote, who would then not see a problem with aging in the same way as people who are still of working age, right? But who is it that, I mean, if you are still working, you are still paying for the government's business, right? And so you need to vote because these things matter. These decisions are being made on your behalf. And if you're not voting, you're not participating in filtering out what should happen is these people are no longer, they do not have the aptitude for this, right? And so I don't vote for them for this reason.
But I'm, you know, as Elizabeth Warren, who says I'm supporting President Biden. I'm supporting him. She says, you can ask it any way you want, but I'm going to say the same thing. President Biden running in 2024. I'm supporting him. And she says she plans to stand by him, and that we would be very fortunate to run against his rival, former President Trump.
That she spoke a big game when she then went to support him as the candidate and said, okay, but I want my progressive issues addressed. She got none of that. So, okay, that's nice that you still support him, but because you gave him an ultimatum, it's like me with my kids and their screen time, like, okay, then I won't give you this thing, but I always give in on the screen times.
Yeah,
We're
I mean,
same.
We'll talk about that. I mean, she didn't get her student loan forgiveness.
Nope.
And there's a whole slew of things she didn't get.
No, family leave. She didn't get any of those things.
And those are things that he promised her, but maybe he didn't remember. I mean, and we don't want to make light of this at all, but here's a guy who is the leader of the free world who needs to be carried around by, an Easter bunny, for crying out loud.
Yes, but I do want to say that either extreme, is just as perplexing. Like, would we elect Justin Bieber? Justin Bieber's of age now. Who else is the next
Michelle
YouTube
Obama.
star?
So here's the thing, right? And this is, I think, the big frustration for at least, the liberal establishment right now, which is, you're going to put up this guy again who thinks he got 80 million votes against President Trump? I mean, good luck with that. Or perhaps a Michelle Obama for Democrats. And that President Obama, he told him privately, apparently last week when they were at the White House, that he plans to run again. And you have to imagine, according to insiders, that they were not happy about this. I'm sure he wants him to step aside. Like, you know what? You had your time.
Who is he, him? I'm not following.
President Obama, President Biden. Mr. Biden, please step aside. Michelle is ready to go. Like, Michelle Obama is ready to run.
You think Michelle Obama wants to run?
They always say that they don't, but of course they do. But who wouldn't want to be president of the United States if you have that? I wouldn't, but if you're in those circles and you've been there before, you absolutely do.
I get scared when someone @replies me because I'm like, is this going to be something shitty you say to me on Twitter? So I wouldn't.
I'd make a great president because nobody can find me anywhere. I'm just a voice somewhere. I would just do voiceover work. So
you'd be like V for Vendetta as a leader.
Yeah, exactly. I would wear my anonymous mask. And so David sent me a text. Apparently he's chomping at the bit here. I'm going to read this for him, but he says, the establishment wants Biden because it allows those actually in power the ability to do what they want and just throw words on a prompter and he'll read it. He's the perfect mind for propaganda.
Yeah, he's a puppet. I mean, that's all he is. He's a puppet. When he said nothing would fundamentally change if you elect me, he was absolutely right. Nothing has fundamentally changed. In fact, it's gotten stronger. I mean, the military-industrial complex has gotten more money than they ever dreamed of. That's expanded. Wall Street is taken care of. Nothing has fundamentally changed at all. We're opening up drilling again. We're not inviting Elon Musk to the White House because we want to make sure that
Yeah, sure.
I mean, give me a break. So nothing has fundamentally changed. Of course, this is the way it goes.